back to the class, everyone. The Endor raid is officially live in-game and ready to play. And while there's about to be a lot of information circulating around about the best strategies with the best comps and possibly even the best remods, I want to take a minute today to talk about where these investments are going to be 9 months from now. So here is the previously mentioned raid. My guild is not currently running it, which is part of the reason why we're not doing any like strategy or comp video right now. We're more so talking about where the requirements are going to be after this whole raid is over. A quick reminder that CG has confirmed this raid is only going to be lasting for about 8 to 9 months. At that point, we will get a new raid with a new list of requirements for us to work on to be able to advance in the reward system, both guild and personal. So the whole point of today's video is we're going to talk about, on a scale, what characters are more important to have at higher relics, not just so that they can participate in the raid, but so that they can give you value in not one but multiple other game modes outside of this. So just so it's very clear and transparent here, this video is not going to be talking about the character's viability inside of the raid. It's specifically going to be aimed at talking about it outside of the raid, because you can get more value from upgrading these characters to Relic 5, to Relic 7, to Relic 8, as far as the raid itself goes. But again, these characters are going to be in your roster forever, whereas this type of scaling is only going to exist for the next 9 months. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into our typical tier system here. Luckily, there are exactly 30 characters that are required. You need to make 8 teams. So this gives us a pretty good baseline on how to organize things. We can have a nice priority 1 of characters that we should be focusing at higher relics in the very beginning, and then just kind of working our way down. So the very first top priority, if we're wanting to have long-lasting investment, not just in the raid, but elsewhere, is going to be this weird hodgepodge here. And for those of you who have not already figured out, the whole reason that it's these 5 characters is because Leia is obviously going to be the most important. I feel like that's just kind of stating the obvious. She is a galactic legend. She has events that are exclusive to her. She is currently one of the strongest defensive teams right now. Part of that is because of the datacron, but even without the datacron, she kills just about every single thing on offense without having to steal from other major teams, despite the fact that she can do that. And the other 4 characters, while they're not useless by any stretch of the imagination, the reason why they're all in priority number 1 for high relics is because you have to have all 4 of these characters at Relic 7 to unlock Leia. That's the whole reason I don't have Leia right now, is because my Scout and my Nisa aren't currently at Relic 7 and ready to go. When I was originally planning for this video and kind of tiering out all the characters, they were in various groups. Like Rex was up here at the top because he was really awesome. Drogon was down here because he's really important in the Leia team. Scout was here because he's really good, and then Nisa was a little bit lower down. And the more I looked at it, the goofier I felt, because you have to have them to have Leia. So if Leia's priority number 1, they as well have to be priority number 1 too. I mean, we can talk a little bit on the more nuanced conversation why Rex is such a great character in Phoenix and Drogon's important for Leia. But ultimately, if you're wanting to have lasting value outside of the raid, you have to get Leia, and that involves getting these 4 characters up that are actually all used in the raid as well. Now, coming down to a little bit more of a nuanced point of view here, these 5 characters I believe are going to be the most important outside the raid, not just now, but also in the coming future. Piet is required for 2 essentially Galactic Legends, Sith Eternal as well as Executor, and on top of that, he is just one of the most important members of the Veers Trooper team. You really have to have him on it. I've made probably 10 videos where I've gone on and talked about the amazing ability that Emperor's Trap is. It's probably the best Zeta out there, where it allows his own team to not only just stack offense and potency, but also get buffs to get the turn meter going, so the Veers team really just can't stop. Jedi Knight Luke really doesn't need much more explanation as well. He is required for 2 Galactic Legends, JML and Jabba, so you do need him at higher relics to even be able to achieve that. And then on top of it, he's just a really good attacker that as well needs to survive. His basic as well as repulse will do a lot of damage against Galactic Legends specifically. And then overall, he just has a lot of the tools that he needs to be able to compete with those higher level teams that typically have higher relics that would require him to be at a higher relic level as well. And attackers are really the ones who benefit most from an R7 or an R8, putting him very easily in this priority number 2. Next up is going to be Iden. Iden might be the most hot take, no pun intended, of all the characters in this priority number 2, and I really stand by it. Yes, she's going to be in the raid. She has a ton of great value in GAC, more now than ever with Scout Trooper out there to kind of reinforce her team. But even outside of GAC, I like to use her quite a bit in Conquest. Her being able to get 100% turn meter at the very beginning of the battle is quite useful for any of those debuff ones where she can instantly go. It doesn't matter if the enemy team has 500, 800, 1000 speed. She will go, she'll immediately kill and knock someone out. And then on top of that, she also has one of the most important ships right now. Whether you're facing just Executors or Leviathans, having a defender with a Iden at least at relics is very beneficial. It's been one of the most important things for my fleet strategy, and if you don't have it yet, again, it can be very important for either helping Thrawn beat Leviathan or Thrawn to beat Executor. It's really the ship that does shine, and Iden is a part of it. Next up is going to be, I believe, Han and Chewie. Again, not a lot of explanation that needs to go on here. These aren't really hot takes. Han is required for 2 Galactic Legends. Chewbacca himself is required for 1, both at fairly high relics already. The Sealess team is also amazing. I guess that probably should go without saying, but we should say it, that you're going to be able to add more value to that team. While Sealess will rip most B or like B plus teams apart with lower relics on those guys, he does get to punch up against a lot stronger teams, especially when there's a favorable datacron, whether it be for Scoundrel, Rebel, Wookiee, whatever it is. Up next is going to be priority 3. So now we're finally starting to move a little bit out of like the requirement area. Again, Leia obviously being number 1, and her requirements are ranking for number 2 is a lot of already characters that you need high relics for certain things like Pietro, Jedi, Luke. This is where we're looking more so for just straight up beneficial. Now 3PO and Hera are also requirements for their respective Galactic Legends, as Hera's is technically Profundity. But Death Trooper, Range Trooper, and Stormtrooper really do like the stats outside of the raid itself. Again, this is mostly focusing on that. Storm is very beneficial right now for Iden. He's one of the better tanks out there. He's going to be able to include a lot of his defense to all of his other Empire or Imperial Trooper allies. He might even have a very special place with the Imperial Remnant. That's kind of yet to be seen without the new Gideon, but regardless, he is going to have a place somewhere. Range, amazing for the Veers team. We've talked about this many times before. The fact that he has a chance on his unique for anyone to call anyone else to out of turn to assist will only further Piet's Emperor's Trap that we talked about earlier, that is triggered when you have characters attacking at a turn, specifically like that. Death is just pretty important overall as utility for Iden. His cooldown increase, the death mark, the daze, the stun, the healing immunity. He does a lot of really good things, and his damage, quite frankly, isn't that bad either. These are the characters that I pretty much have Relic 5 right now, and that will be on kind of on the first list for me to be able to take up to Relic 7, because as you can kind of see, for these first 2 layers, I will have them at Relic 7 just because of where they're at, leaving these ones for pretty high priority, because not only will I be able to get better boxes in the raid, assuming they function well, but on top of that, they will have good value outside of it. Priority number 4. So this is where it gets a little bit weird, and this is not meant at all as an insult to Veers or Moff Gideon, or quite frankly even Stark. The whole reason why these guys are in a lower priority tier when it comes to ranking in relics is because Veers and Moff Gideon, quite frankly, just function at Relic 3. If you have them at Relic 3, they can use datacrons, and their teams typically function around being glass cannons, meaning as long as they move first, they get going, they get the turn meter, their allies get to hit. It doesn't really matter how weak they are, because they just have to survive and not be hit on a counter and die, and they will eventually just wipe out the enemy team. They both kind of fall into that category that they really do live up to this support role. They're not really needing to do the damage. They're not really needed to take the damage within themselves. We do have the Ewoks on here as well, purely because these 2 Ewoks are both required for Leia herself, so you need them at a bare minimum at Relic 3. So once you've kind of worked out the higher priority characters listed in this list, like Death Trooper, Stormtrooper, Jedi Knight, Luke, as well as Leia herself, these are ones that I think we can start to consider taking to higher relic levels. Not just because Wicket and Chief Trooper are kind of guaranteed to be in any Ewok team at this point in the game, but you already have them at Relic 3, and depending on where their abilities fit in, again, within the raid, there might be a team that can function without having to be with a bunch of other Ewoks, which I guess even then you only need 3, so Chirpo, Wicket, and Nisa up top would be a functional team, assuming that is how it works. Next up is Priority 5 and Priority 6. Now, these last 2 are, it's important to note, this is really where the cutoff is going to matter, because we can only take a total of 8 teams. 8 teams times 3, that's 24, meaning out of the 30 characters, 6 of them are going to have to get left out. So assuming they're just not good in the raid at all, or really they're not going to be good in the game anywhere again in 9 months, which is what we're trying to do here, these bottom 5 characters are really the ones that are out. I mean, maybe Ewok Elder or Logray can swap with one of the teams up from this next row here. Depending on what Nisa is needing to swap in and out for, that'll vary a little bit on the comp. But really, even this priority 5, like Admiral Akbar's ship isn't half bad. Wedge is actually kind of a nice plug and play for Mon Mothma, depending on what you're trying to take out. The defense down on basic is kind of nice. Lando's okay-ish in a Sauna team as well. Shore has some overall plug and play viability. None of them are amazing characters, but a lot of them are good-ish characters. Poplo is here just because when it comes to an Ewok team, he's typically the 4th most important member, and he is one of the lesser likely to get switched out and to be able to put Nisa in there, whereas Logray and Ewok Elder, depending on what you're trying to counter, one of them will eventually get swapped out, so that's kind of where they fall here. The other nice added thing onto that is that these 3 characters right here are already required at Relics or other things, so in a very similar mentality to that as Wicket and Chirpa, if you already have them at Relic 3, taking them to even higher relics will be less painful than saying having to build up Shore or Poplu or whoever else from a ground like these characters down below. Magma, I really don't mean to insult him that much, but Scout really has kind of pushed him out, and the way things are currently set up, and this might change, we can't build 3 Imperial Trooper teams with the new Moff Gideon that's coming out, so there are just going to have to be cuts that are going to be made about who is and who isn't, and he, quite frankly, at least when he stacks up to the other Imperial Troopers, you might already have at Relics because of a Legendary, or just because their general viability is very good, like Stormtrooper, you're going to want to have them in place of him. So that is going to be today's video. Again, we will have videos hopefully talking about the strategies and comps and stuff like that, but if you're just looking for a resource of, all right, I'm not going to be that invested in the raid itself. I'm going to do my best, but I'm more focused on not wanting to do poor resource management. That's kind of what this video was aiming to do. So thank you guys for watching. As always, stay awesome.